I am happy to see you today while we are continuing to talk about our finances. And today's topic is going to be very easy because we all should know it. But it's one that we really don't talk about. It's just like assumed. So I'm going to pray and we're going to really have a little discussion about our topic for tonight. So please bow your heads with me and we'll go to the Father so we can jump right in. Lord, we thank you for today. We thank you that appears to be a beautiful day, even though I know it was raining some here, nice in some other places. But it's been a day that we are still here, and so we are thanking you just for the gift of the day. We thank you that you have binded us together as sisters and that we are looking to your word for some real answers. We ask that you will bless and keep each one of the Bible girls tonight as we continue through the word and bind us together even closer, that we may continue to lean on each other to continue to see what it is that you have for us in your word. These and other blessings we ask in your daughter's son, Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen. All right. So tonight's topic, most people would have thought that it would have been the first topic that we talked about in our financial series, but I did not want to start there because sometimes I think it is used as a weapon instead of a lesson, and that is to talk about tithing. So let me share my screen and we can get started here. Able to see? Yes. All right. So, um, if you've been in a church more than 5 minutes, you have heard the word tithing. And I'm very shocked that recently I heard that someone that was not a new Christian and was not a young person asked, "What is tithing?" I was floored. And I think that because it is something that is assumed that we all do, we don't really talk about it. So I know that I don't have to teach you nothing with tithing. So I hope that we could actually have very interactive and inclusive conversation on it tonight. Um, I am titling this What Can I Get for My Dime? And I must tell you that this is an affinity topic for me because my father preached a sermon. I am certain it was 35 years ago. And it's like I have this sermon like embedded into my head because he continuously tried to get us as a church to just look at it's only a dime. And so when I was writing out, what I would do with us, I said, what I want to do is ask the ladies today, since this is 2026, what can we actually buy for a dime? I'm trying to think of something that I could. And the only thing that I thought about is when I go into Cracker Barrel and they have like little candy behind, the counter, the little soft peppermints. Now you can get one for a dime. And it used to be they were 2 cents or 3 cents for those little soft peppermints. I know the price of everything is increased, but if we can see that something as simple as a piece of candy, we can barely even get for a dime anymore. I was talking to my mom a couple weeks ago and she showed me some candy. I don't remember the name of it and was telling me how much it was. There is nothing that we can get for 10 cents anymore. But if we look at what the scripture actually says to us, there's a whole lot that we get for a dime or 10% that we're giving back to Christ. And this is what I want us to talk about tonight. Now, if you have something that you can still buy for a dime, I really want to know what that is because I couldn't think of anything. And even with the little peppermint example, they add tax to it, so it's still more than 10 cents. So okay, Long Johns, 10 cents each. Like back in the day, you could get a lot. Like I remember just actually sitting talking to my grandmother sometimes about various things, and I'm like, it costs what? Or you could see like when you do those like affinity um posters like for someone's birthday or whatever, and it tells you what year they were born. It'll tell you the price of all kinds of things. I guarantee you none of those things are the same. But if we think about what God has asked of us, at no point have we left from the 10% or the dime. We haven't left from that. And it's still very difficult for some people to do. So, going into this, what I first did was wanted to like actually look at tithing in the scriptures because in most cases, when anybody talks about it, we initially go to Malachi, which I do want to go to because there's maybe two little phrases in there that I think we pass over. I don't want to go to the typical, which is, will a man rob God? You already have when you tithe and offering. That's all we hear. And it almost sounds like it's a guilt trip on us to say, oh, I don't want to rob God. But I think if we actually talk about tithing in the sense of it is a form of worship, that it is an act of obedience, like it is, like if we talk in those terms and not where we typically try to scare somebody into doing something or force somebody into doing something, it gives you a different outlook or should give you a different outlook because it's actually being taught and explained differently. Now, I talked to one of my favorite people in the world when I was preparing this. His name is Marvin Wiley. He is like the best. He's a storyteller when he teaches and preaches. So we were talking about the Bible and we were talking about money, and he said, "Can I get in on your Bible study?" And I said yes. So he said, "You got to quote me on this." So I am quoting Marvin E. Wiley out of Maywood, Illinois, when I say this. He said, I need you to show them that tithing, I want to start by saying it's not about Malachi. He said, well, take them to the Old Testament. Marvin Wiley's words, that tithing commenced with Abraham. He starts out by using the scriptures, and then I definitely want to pause and go here. So let me grab a Bible. Um, Pause, and he's like, walk them through the word that it didn't just happen in Malachi. And because we actually read through most of the scriptures the 2 years ago, I know that we saw this, as we was reading through, especially when it got to talking about the various sacrifices and how things should have been done. Like we saw that this did not start in Malachi, but I want to remind us that because we typically only go to Malachi. Because so if we go to Genesis chapter 14, when it first happens with Abraham, it doesn't even seem like it's talking in relation to God. Um, Chapter 14 and verse 20. Not on the right page. Let's see if I wrote this wrong. So it doesn't look like it reads like I wanted to read. 1 second. Oh, yeah. 14. That doesn't read how I wanted to read. So my notes said, and he gave him tithes of all. I got to look up which verse that is. But in Genesis chapter 14, starts with Abraham voluntarily giving a tenth through I cannot pronounce this Melchizedek. Start was the first time that we see tithing introduced, and the point that he was trying to make is that this was even before the Mosaic Law, because when you get over into more of the New Testament, you're going to always see people referring back to Moses. This happened before Moses. Is the point that he was trying to make. Then he said that it continued with Jacob. And with Jacob, that was in chapter 28, verse 22. Says, and this stone that I have set up as a pillar will be God's house, and all that you give me, I will give you a tenth. Was when it was first referenced by Jacob. Then we get to Moses. So in most cases, we always talk about Moses, and Moses gave all of these laws, and in Leviticus and in Deuteronomy. The first time when he does it, in Leviticus, this is going to be chapter 27 and verse 30. Says, a tithe of everything from the land, whether grain from the soil or the fruit from the trees, belongs to the Lord. It is holy to the Lord, is Leviticus, the first time that Moses talks about it. Then you'll see it again in Numbers and in Deuteronomy, where he's telling them to like continue. Then we all know that Joshua came after Moses, and because Joshua was really like a help to Moses, Joshua's scriptures read basically like he's saying like to continue what Moses said. So if we go to Joshua, both of them, the one that's in chapter 1 and in 23 that I listed, they read slightly different, but he basically is saying keep what Moses told us. And if he did tell them to tithe, it's one of them. This one, Joshua 1 and 7 says, be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the laws my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. When he gets down to chapter 23, he's saying some similar pieces. And then I'm listing Nehemiah here because in Nehemiah, so when Joshua, he divided them all up to go to the various places and they had their exiles. In Nehemiah, they're beginning to reintroduce all of the things that were already taught before. They again talk about the tithe in Nehemiah. And then in the last one that he said was that Jesus confirmed it. So remember in Matthew, like this is one of the funny stories to me that Jesus kind of like was snapping at the Pharisees. Remember him in Matthew when Jesus was like, "Woe to you," to the Pharisees. They were basically overlooking the social justice and issues that were happening, but was worried about money. He basically said like, y'all giving the money, but y'all are like missing the mark. This is 23 and 23 in Matthew, with Jesus saying, woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites, you give a tenth of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin, but you have neglected the more important matters of the law, justice, mercies, and faithfulness. You should have practiced the latter without neglecting the former. So he's not telling them not to tithe, but he's telling them that you should also be worried about the other things. So you have all the way back to Abraham, you have Jacob, Moses, Joshua, Jesus, and I'm sure we could add in other stories in there, but it's more than just in Malachi that we see the references to tithing. So if the way it's worded or the way it's stated from Malachi hits your buttons the wrong way, it's not just in that book, and it is definitely something that is commanded that we should follow. Okay, now when I heard over 35 years ago, the way my father had taught this lesson. And as a kid, you're listening not as attentively as you do as an adult, I would say that. So the things that I can remember when I first heard this, he gave a litany of things that we will get for this dime. And I remember one of them being about God's protection. Like we think in terms of everything that we get has to be something physical, but the closer that we get to God and the more that we actually see that He is the source of all things, that what we are looking for in return is never going to be the tangible things. And I think that we have been um, told or may have heard prosperity teachings that sometimes cause us to think that we should stop giving because we haven't received, or we have some false teachings and false preachings that tell us do this and it's going to mean that, and that they're saying doesn't happen. So we're thinking, well, why am I still giving this? Because we have not looked at it as our source of our allegiance to the source who gave it to us in the first place. And so I have about four things, I think, maybe five things that I want to highlight, that this is how our minds and our hearts should be when it comes to tithing. Um, and then let's just have a conversation. So, at its simplest form, tithing by definition in the Christian church is that we give a tenth of all that we have back to God. There's questions that we're going to ask at the end that sometimes people say, what do I give this tenth from? Do I give it off my net? Do I give it off my gross? Where do I give this? Who do I give this to? Are sometimes questions that we have. But from its simplest definition, 10% of what we have received, we've earned, we've made, however you want to say it, goes back to God as our first form of worship back to Him. So, what can we get in return for this? What do we learn by the practices of tithing? So, the first thing that I want to say is that tithing actually teaches us to trust God for His provision. If we truly are Bible girls, we truly do read the word, and we truly say that what is in this book we believe, like we say that the Bible has no fallacy, that there is nothing in here that is wrong, God said He will provide for us. When we actually do look at money, physically money, not tithing off our time, which I think we should do, not tithing our talent, which I think we should do, but the money. When you actually look at the money part of it, it actually forces you to take a piece of that budget that we talked about, that it allocates it towards God's business or to give back to Him. And depending on how much money you make or you receive, sometimes that 10% is a nice little penny that you have to see. And it really is you depending upon God to replace that. Most people will say, I can't afford to tithe because they're looking at the number. I say we can't afford to not tithe because of the blessings that God gives back to us, which is why we are going to go to Malachi at the end. If we are only looking at the number and we've made our budget so tight and we did not make room for this as one of our envelopes, that when it's time to give, we are trying to go to the other envelopes and pull something to give to Him that was not our best, that was not our first, and was not what He commanded. We penciled Him in somewhere else. Putting Him in your line items or your envelopes means that you have to trust God to replace that amount, or to work, you are working without that and saying that He is going to take care of everything. And because we don't fully trust that He can take care of everything, is where the tension comes in when we don't do this. So without looking at the numbers themselves, if we get our hearts to the place that we are saying that this belongs to God, there is no question about this. Everything else that you have to do with those envelopes to get around the fact that this is God's and that's it, you're taking away the element that you have to figure everything out. If God said, give me the 10th, if we are honestly giving him the 10th, we have to trust that God is going to do what God said, and we have to trust that he will provide. If we get past that first piece, the rest of it is going to be easy. Do we trust God to be our provider, to actually make provisions for all the things that we need? If there is an element of trust that's not there, no different than a regular relationship you have with your spouse, your child, your, coworkers, whatever. If you don't trust somebody, you're not doing what they said. If you truly do trust and you can really depend on them, you could just let it be, and what happens just happens. You got to get to that point that God truly is a provider and that you got to leave it in his hands, which means it is going to teach you to trust God if you don't already trust God. You got to be the first thing that I would tell you. You get God's provision when you give him your tithe. All right. The next thing that actually comes out of tithing is an element of discipline. We talked weeks ago about your actual budget itself. And we talked about how you have to not spend when it's not, available in our little envelopes. Tithing does the same thing. It is us putting God first, but it's the consistency in doing it that also helps you with your discipline. It is should be a line item in the budget, but guess what? You control the budget. You control what you do and what you don't do, if you give, if you don't give, and don't nobody see that but you and God, right? Like there's a story in Mark, I believe it's chapter 12, where it talks about Jesus seeing the woman who put the two mites, as it's described. Let me make sure I'm saying the right. I know it's verses 40. I guess chapter 12. Yes, Mark chapter 12, starting at verse 41, where Jesus sees the woman put the two mites in. He saw other people come around and they were putting in large sums of money. And then when he saw this woman, he, makes statements about her giving out of all she had. She only gave two, they gave more, but what she did was more valuable because she really gave it from her heart. You, in the practice of your budgeting, nobody sees that but you and God. Your spouse, maybe, the pastor, who the finance people, they know it. But you could tell me anything. I don't know what you're doing with your money. So it should be as if Jesus was sitting there watching that woman put her two little things in when you are writing out your checks or paying your tithes. You can give five, whatever you're doing. You and God sees, and he sees it and he knows it. The discipline that comes from that, tying back to your trusting him, is something that helps you to grow as a person. So even though I can't say that Jesus implemented it so that he would give you the discipline, you certainly can gain the practice of discipline by doing it and being truthful for it. When we do it, and the first element when I told you, like, you should direct your money and your budget, here again is somewhere that your money follows your heart. If this is something that is important to you, have the discipline to keep it going. It helps actually develop you. So while you're doing your non-tithing, while you're doing your budgeting, helps you to stick to what you say you're going to do because you're getting the discipline to do this for God. Okay. When you actually do tithe, and you really truly do understand that what you are doing is giving back to God, one of the effects that comes from this is your outlook on money. You may have had $100, to make it a simple example, which means you're going to give $10 for tithing. You have $90 that are left because you are so easily to break that 100. You see the 90, you start spending. Money goes any and everywhere, right? You actually giving that 10% is you acknowledging that everything that you had came from God in the first place. He truly is the source of all things. And if you truly do believe the Bible, you can see that when you put something in God's hand, God actually multiplies it, or he divides it, or he quadruples it, or depending on, what story we have. Nothing that anybody ever came and brought to God left the same way. Why would our money be any different? If we know that he truly is um, using us as a steward, he blessed us enough to be able to have the funds. Because truly, there are people who don't get paid. There are people who don't gain anything. There are people who literally actually have to beg for every single thing that they have. You're not in that position. If you can change your mindset from, oh, I gotta give this 10% to I get to give this 10%, it's a whole different outlook. I watched I want to say it's like a podcast, and they were questioning Cat Williams, who was a comedian, and they mentioned this number that he gave. He is very he's very giving, and plenty of people say that, when they wasn't working or they whatever, he came through, so he's known to give. So this person that was interviewing him was saying, you know that you gave, say they said, $14 million, and he was just so calm, and he was like, yep, but I know if I gave 14 million, what you think that the Lord gave me? And it was such a whole different outlook. About it's not about that I gave it, it's that I had it to give. And if I have it to give, then my hands are not so tight where I'm trying to hold on to everything. I know that God blessed me with things that I will be able to give things. So that first 10%, is coming out, going into whatever pot, your 10% goes into. But it also shows you that it didn't belong to you in the first place. You were just stewarding what God gave you, and you can release the grips on your hands of it so that whatever else God tells you to do, you'll be easy to do it because you first trusted him in the first place, and you are now having the discipline, and you not only your hands but your heart is being loosened when it comes to money, right? Most of the time when we have issues with finances, it truly is because of our mindset, which is why I told you in week one, we have to get past the fact that we don't have enough to work with. We do have enough to work with. We got to put it in the right place. And in this case, we are truly saying that we start with God and watch this trickle down. Now, the next piece is to me is very dear to me, which is why I started with the trusting God, because throughout the Bible, like even if I just pick one scripture and use where Jesus himself was saying that the poor will be with us always. If you look how Jesus moved throughout the different regions, Jesus was never around the elite. He was not going to find the people that could take care of him. Matter of fact, when he sent his the 72 out, he told them, don't take nothing from these people. Like, there's an element that Jesus introduced that we can take the model from, and that is that there is work to do outside of our little umbrella. And we as Americans can say that we are blessed. We do not live in third world countries, even though we could say we're in a recession or the price of gas is so high, we still come nowhere near the things that people in foreign countries, in some poverty stricken cities, towns, places, we're nowhere near that. And if we are aligned to a body that believes in missionary work or believes in community impact, the monies that that you're giving to God, goes to support that. You may never go to, I'm gonna say Ghana because I have a affinity for a missionary that used to go to Ghana all the time. I've never been to Ghana. I don't have a desire to go to Ghana either. But when there is an offering being, raised, or when there's a line item for something like that, me giving in helps support that. So if I'm with a body of people who has a foreign mission or home mission, element of what they're doing, my money gets to go to that too. So if I am tithing and the body that I'm connected to is using the funds for that community or to support, some kind of work, your money is doing that. So when you do that, you actually get to be seen as I'm in partnership with God. Now, I've heard um, really horrible statements where people say God owes me. God don't owe you nothing. He promised you some things, but he don't owe you anything. You get to be in partnership with him to help do some of the things that he wants us to do. And what I always say to people who have a very hard time in giving is, what if the shoe was on the other foot? Wouldn't you want someone to help you if that was the situation that you were in? It doesn't have to be across the seas. It could be somebody right down the street that is a recipient of these things. Even if you don't save money in this instance, this past weekend, my sister did a give back to the neighborhood. People donating clothes and doing all kind of things. People need that kind of stuff. But when you have bodies that support that kind of work, your money to God, we're going to get to that in a minute, it has to be that you're supporting something. So that's another thing that comes. And then um, the last piece that I'm saying is that when you do it, you are actually inviting God to provide. Now, at the beginning, I said you're trusting that He will provide. Now that you're actually doing it, you're actually inviting Him to. When you go through Deuteronomy, say like chapter 20, I'm gonna say between 27 28 all the way up to chapter 30, it talks about blessings and cursings. It talks about doing what God told us to do. It talks about what He is going to do back for us, and it literally says you make the choice. You want the blessings or do you want the cursings, right? Which is why I know I have to bring Malachi in, which I don't want to start with it because there's a reference made there as well. In Malachi chapter 3, it starts at verse 7. It says, since the days of your ancestors, you have turned from my statutes, you have not kept them. Return to me, and I will return to you, says the Lord of armies. Yet you ask, how can we return? Will a man rob God? Yet you are robbing me. How do we rob you, you ask? By not making the payments of the tenth and the contributions. Verse 9 says, you are suffering under a curse, yet you, the whole nation, are still robbing me. Bring the full tenth into the storehouse, so that there may be food in my house. Test me in this way, says the Lord of armies. See if I will not open the floodgates of heaven and pour out a blessing for you without measure. Okay, that ends at verse 10. Right in the actual scriptures here that we typically do use for that, God even talks about the curse as well. You're living under a curse. Why do you keep doing this? And I want to put this at the end in this section here because most cases we're out here trying to figure out what's wrong with my money. Why ain't I doing right? Why can't I make this? Why can't I make ends meet? And going back to Haggai, where God is like, you keep doing this and you don't realize that there are holes in the bags that you are putting your money in, but you keep doing the same thing over and over and over. When we actually do what he tells us to do, we are literally saying to him, okay, Big G, you told me to give it. I gave it. I trust you. I'm having the discipline. I am going in partnership with you so that the missions and the words that you have. Now, what about me? Take care of me. And when we do, I promise you, there is nobody else that can provide for you greater than God, the Almighty. Like that's who He is. And we have this book. I was saying this the other day in mission. This whole book that we have is full of nothing but stories of people bragging on God. Give Him something to work with. And I promise you, the things that you get back, not necessarily dollars back to you. He never said he was blessing us with cars or big houses or jets or vacations filled with whatever. He never said any of that. He will take care of us. He will protect us. He will give us peace. He will be with us. Like the promises that he gave us, they're all in there. And they're not monetary. Sometimes he will give us blessings that we can equate to money, but he never said that that's what's going to happen. So if that's what you've been told or taught, that is not what he said. But if you put things in his hand, he is going to provide for you. Invite him to be the provision that you need. All right. Now there is conversation sometimes about bringing first fruit. And there's never really anything being taught about first fruit. Sometimes people say, well, that's what we do when we tithe. We can say that that's a form of it. If we read throughout the Old Testament, there is reference. I mean, think about it. They were farmers. So some people are like, I don't have fruit to bring. How can we translate fruit and naturally, in a sense, to us today so that we can be giving God our first? Money, of course, the tithing, giving him 10% off the top. That is a form of giving him our first. But outside of that, he wants our best, right? Sometimes, people will go so far as to say, that's why you got to wake up first and spend time with God first, giving him the first of your time. That's why he should be at the top of every decision. You're giving him the considerations first. You can start with him. Anytime you get something new, you give it to him. Like the same way that the scriptures say that the people brought their first of their first crop, their first child, their first animal. We can give God our first as well. And in a traditional sense, we can decide. This takes you away from tithing. This now takes you into like sacrificial giving, to decide to give God another piece, to say, God, I trust you. This is what I am giving to you. And in our case, if we tie it to the scriptures, it can be connected to the terms of giving our first fruit. I gave you three scriptures here: Exodus 23:19, Proverbs 3:9 and 10, and Deuteronomy 26:10, that all reference people bringing the first fruit, or in the Proverbs saying that I will bring the first fruit. Like you can make this declaration that you will do this. It still all goes back to you giving God the priority, and for us to know that all of our resources came from him, belongs to him. And where is our heart? Okay. Wherever our heart is, that's where our treasure will be. If we know that he gave us the resources, it's his anyway. And if we have the faith and the trust that he is going to provide, we make that a priority. So you can associate the first fruit as a part, or your tithing as a part of first fruit, but you can go beyond the 10% to follow that practice as well. Okay. Now, questions that typically come up when we talk about tithing, and that is, do I tithe off of my net income or do I tithe off of my gross income? Do you know that there is no concept of netting or grossing in the Bible because it didn't exist back then? Okay, I just told you they were bringing the first of the fruit. They was bringing the first of the fat off of the cows. That's what they were bringing. We don't have that concept. So they didn't have our concept. So, what is the right answer here? Net or gross? So I'm gonna be churchy when I say this, and I'm gonna pause, for us to talk here. Um, if you are trying to decide if you want to or should tithe off of your net or your gross, I'm going to ask you, what kind of provisions do you want? You want net provisions or gross provisions? What kind of blessings do you want? You want net provisions or gross provisions? That's what I'm going to say to you in a churchy kind of word method, because it's not written in the Bible, right? If we are Bible girls, we're going to try to go find the answer. It does not address this to the heart of what it is saying. What went into your bank account is your net. What you earned was your gross. You have to make that decision what you're going to give to him. But when you're making that decision, what's right or what's wrong, that goes back to a heart matter. And it goes back to discipline as well. And then it definitely goes back to whether or not you can trust him to replace what you gave back to him. So whether or not you're tithing on your net or the gross, you can't find in the Bible. Okay. The second question that I hear a lot is, what if I want to support something else? So if my tithe, if tithing is being in partnership with God, or tithing is helping, giving back, then ABC Church down the street is doing something that I want to support. Why can't I give my tithes over there? Okay. Um, if we take the concept of what was happening in the scriptures, they didn't have multiple churches. So that wasn't an issue in the Bible either. But if depending on what denomination or religion you're in, there are what in the Baptist, like I'm part of Baptists and Christians, there is what's called articles of faith. And there is what's called the church covenant. And in the church covenant, there is a reference to supporting the missions and the work of this church, like where you are. So think of it like this. If your light bill is due at your home, would you go pay the light bill at somebody's home down the street? Or would you pay the light bill at your own home? You got to pay the light bill at your own home, not the one that's down the streets. So your tithing should be given where you are. If you have an issue with tithing where you are, the problem is not the tithing. The problem is something else. So you got to address where you are if you have a problem putting it here. All right. The last question that I hear sometimes, and this is being more prevalent than what I thought it was. I hear this too much. What if I don't agree with what they are doing with the money? So you go to ABC Church and they are doing XYZ with the funds. Should I keep tithing my money there? Or what if I don't agree with it? The first principle that we have to understand is that you didn't give it to this church because the church didn't command you to give it. You gave it to God. That's who commanded for us to give it. We would pray that that church is doing the right thing by those funds because they are operating in the name of the Lord. You gave it to God. You have to take your hands off and trust that they are going to do the right thing. There should be avenues to deal with the church not doing the right thing, but it's not you saying, I'm not going to give my tithe, because now you're disconnecting from God, where you're trying to disconnect from this action of this church. So be very careful that you don't circumvent or try to circumvent what's happening, and then what's happening with you and God. Now, do churches not do what they're supposed to do? Yes. Do things happen in churches that you can't even believe is happening? Yes. I am not going to ignore what I know happens. Like there's too many stories that's on the internet. There's too many personal stories that I know about things that have happened. But you cannot focus on that because you've taken your eye off of the provider. Because this again comes from God. Again, if their issue is what's happening, there's a whole nother issue. The issue is not tithing. It's a different issue that needs to be addressed. So make sure that you don't take don't um invoke a curse upon yourself when you're trying to address something else. Get the other thing addressed, but you should type. Okay, I'm gonna pause right here so we can chat about these things, or you know a couple other things. um let's talk about this. Do you tithe off of your net or your gross? What if, you want to support another church? And what if you don't agree with what they're doing? Let's chat about this since these are the prominent questions that I hear. Do you guys hear these or question these things at all?
Um, so I was taught to tithe off my net. So I do
Okay.
net. And I'm told that supporting another church is more of a sacrificial giving. And I was also, it's not my business what they're doing. Like this is between me and God.
Mhm.
So if it's being mishandled, that's between them and God.
Mhm.
Um, So that's how I was taught. But I did want to say that years ago I was at a church and I didn't tithe. Like my faith was like whack, young mom, and just stuff was happening. And at the end of the year, we were in like our leadership. I was a leader. We were like in our leadership meeting, and during the meeting, they were like, we didn't do this, we didn't do that, this kind of stuff, and like they showed the budget, and they showed like how much short the budget was, like from doing, say if it was like we were short $800. Well, I even had a plan that like I wrote down like this is how much my tithe is on my calendar, and I actually went back to when I stopped tithing to, that day. And the amount that I did not tithe is what the budget was short. And so I felt very, very convicted. And I didn't tell everyone, but I was like, whoa, that's crazy. So because of me, we didn't get to do those things. And I know technically it wasn't, but technically it was. But yeah, so it's just one of them learning experiences where it like had to come back around full circle and like smack me in the face.
Smacks us in the face like all the time. That's why I want us to not look at it like an obligation, like people try to beat us over the head, just talk about money, but that we see that it is definitely an allegiance to God. Again, because of what He provides for us, what He is promising us, and again, the Bible is it's a huge book. It's so big, for us to see the multiple examples of the way he has provided. And I am sure that if I asked every last one of you, can you brag on God? I know you could. I know that you could say what God has done already. Forget what he will do, what he can do. What he's done already is already enough that discipline and trust should already be there because that's what it amounts to. When we remove the actual element of the fear of the money not being there, and I'm certain that like Carla, you're not alone. Like I've heard people say, I can't afford to do it. Like or I'll have to give what's left, because they're literally only looking at the checkbook or the envelope at that moment, and they cannot see how it's going to happen. And I don't want people to have to always have I call them the God factors where he always shows up so big before people are, trusting him to do something. I don't think that should have to happen. But I do know once it does happen that because you're front and center, that you get it firsthand and You'll never go back. So thanks for sharing. Anyone else?
Yes, I would just like to say that I have been out with health issues, and our church was changing over from how they did the payments. And I was like, I'm not putting it in because I don't want it to go somewhere else or it leave or whatever. So I said, I'm just going to put it to the side. And I said, I'm not going to touch it because this does not belong to me. When you, when God has shown you just how gracious He is, you made the statement, do we want what God, what we really want from God, or do we want His promises? I don't want what He's really supposed to give me. I don't want that. So
Nobody does.
I want to be obedient. And I was like, okay. So when it came time, when I figured it out what they were doing, I said, okay, I need to write this. I said, I have to write a check. I won't do this other stuff. I need to write a check because it was a large amount. And I was like, okay, I need you to take this and I need you to put it in. And my sons looked at me and they were like, Mama, you serious? I said, yeah. I said, God has blessed me. I said, and I'm showing you. You don't have to spend just because it's there. It was never mine. I took it off the top. I said, you have to get there. When God blesses you to go to work every day, you haven't missed, and He still provides you on that Friday or every other week that you get paid, you come home with a check. You take it off the top because I guarantee you, y'all are not going to miss going to In and Out, going out to the movies, getting you a pair of shoes. I said, take your tithe off the top before you do anything else. And so that's what I just want them to see. No, I had to get there, but at the same time, you showed me that no, this belongs to me, and I'm putting it in. So I mean, I get it. And they were like, well, the church is doing. I said, I don't have anything to do with that. I'm only answering for what God has told me to do. You do whatever you want with that, because that's not mine. And I'm not about to carry that luggage.
Amen to that. Now, and one of the comments that you made makes me think when I'm talking to younger people, um, I always say it's not that he wants to take 10%, it's that he gave you 90%. Like you have to think about it from not a negative place because they don't have discipline at all. Most of them are just excited that they got some money or already ready to go spend. Like I was telling my niece when before she got a job, she was telling me that she wanted to buy these shoes. And I said, you're gonna work only for money and shoes. That's it. You're gonna eat it up and you're gonna walk on them because you don't have any discipline for what you're doing. And when she got her first job, she showed me her check and was telling me, okay, Auntie Mimi, I know what to do. Because we had talked so much. We have to teach our children and train younger people, but it can't be from a scary place. It has to be a form of worship to them. I get to give God 10%. I get to be in partnership with him, for what, he is saying that this is, where my money is going to go. I get to do that. Like I get to be one of God's people. We have to make it where that they, how we had to get there. And because I'm sure that it didn't always happen with us. Think about as kids, how when I would teach kids, I would see how some would try to hold their money back. You could tell that their parents would say, "Put this quarter in," or "You're gonna do this with that." But they would be trying to figure out, like, I need to save this for this. I want to buy this. I want to do that, and not wanting to give. Even in those little children, you're teaching them all of the steps. And a lot of it comes from the fact that they're watching what we do. So I do applaud you for being able to, tell your children or show your children. And we have to keep dropping those nuggets so they can get there. But if we can see that it is not a punishment, to us, it's truly discipline, which the word discipline is a punishment word to most people, but it's discipline getting us to be in partnership with Him. I get to do something for God. That's the way I like to look at it. Okay, anybody else?
I tied off of the gross. I haven't missed anything. It's just a blessing to be able to have it to give.
Amen. All right. Okay. All right. So if I um take one comment or ask you guys to make up your own list. If someone was to say to you, "What do I get for my dime?" What is your, this is what I get? What do you know that God does or God is? Um, what do you know you are getting for your dime? Okay, I see you coming in the chat that you meant to say you tired of gross. Yes. You know what's so funny is like when there are some, I'm gonna say it this way, in its simplest form is like working with a spreadsheet sometimes, how you have things that go across or things that go down. I'm like, this is the row, this is the row, row. Okay, row. Like I always have to think like there's always these two terms. Make sure I say the right thing. That always happens with net and gross as well. Like which one is the net? Which one is the gross? All
Of
right.
course. Yeah, I was
What
going
do
to
you
ask
get
her
for your
where did
dime?
she get that from?
What'd you say?
I was going
Uh,
to ask her where did she get that tiding off a net from?
Oh, well, I was hearing people say, matter of fact, I actually heard a pastor teaching that he will not. Now, I think it's wrong. I'm gonna say that before I before I say this. I think it's wrong what he said, but I understand what he's trying to do. He was telling his congregation that they he is not asking them for 10%. That's the way he said it. I am not asking you for 10%. I am asking you for $45 a week. It's like the way he said it. And I'm like, why is he saying that? And what I gathered, the more that I heard it, was they had made their budget. Like, she made a reference about the church missing the budget. They had made their budget. And if every person paid $45 a week, that made up their budget. And he was trying to get them to the point of the discipline to consistently doing it. And he said, I don't have y'all at the $45 a week mark yet. I know I can't ask you for the 10%. You're not going to do that. I'm trying to get you to the discipline. And he said, now, can some of you pay the 10%? Yes, you can. Your heart ain't there yet. I'm trying to get you there. He said, if I don't want to tell you to do the 10% and you do nothing and walk away. And he just kept forcing, just pay the $45. And I'm like, that is so not right. Like, teach them to tithe, right? And for it went on for a couple of years, and he has, come back because I asked him about it. He came back and he said that he does have tithing paying members. He had very young Christians that had the attitude like I can't do that. So he was, trying to teach discipline. But I know that there are people who even still talk about paying dues instead of tithing. There are people who say all kinds of things, right? I want us to be able to go to the word, and I want us to be able to say that we can't expect God to hold up his end of the bargain if we haven't even started ours. So that's one reason why whenever somebody does talk to me about finances or in problems of finances, I say, "Do you tithe?" I start immediately because I'm gonna talk to you from a biblical perspective. I don't want to just talk about your numbers. I want to talk about the whole thing. God gave us the opportunity to make the money or to receive the money, whatever our issue may be. We got to put them on the top. So, okay, what do you say you get for your dime? We'll end with that. What do
Peace of
you get?
mind.
Peace of mind. All right.
Okay, you're truly my mom because I was gonna say peace. Um,
Ah,
I'm gonna go to the next. I get joy, and
Joy.
over the fact, obviously, that I have a job.
mhm,
But the reason I can say the reason why I was confused gross and net is because I think of the miracle of the disciples and their net broke. Like, but there was so
mm,
much in their net, so that's why I always confuse the two, thinking that net is the more.
mm,
Okay.
Just from hearing that.
mhm.
Take that
Provision.
I was gonna
provision.
say peace as well. But you also get a closer relationship with him when you're being obedient to what he asked you to do.
Mhm.
Yes. It feels good too when you know you're doing what he said to do. Like you can like when you with your around your parents, like this ain't me because I wasn't bad like this, but
Ah,
like kids. Honestly, this is not me. I was a bad child. Like that is a fact. But what I'm about to say, I didn't do. Got people like kids that they be lying, like, and they don't want to go around their parents or don't want to, be whatever because they know they bad or they know they did the wrong thing or they know they lied. It's the same way with God. Like when you know you haven't done what you're supposed to do, you don't
mm,
feel right.
mm.
Like you need to feel right. You just do what you're supposed to do. Like give him open praise, can actually like receive the things that he's given us, actively worship him, knowing that hey, I've done my part and I feel you and I'm honoring you. It's an open place. When you don't, you're kind of like, you know, feeling some kind of way. So don't invoke that upon yourself.
There's
All right.
also the overflow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. He is so good. Like I was telling the ladies at church this past weekend that every one of us have our own story, like how we can brag on God. Like that's what I call praise reports, bragging on God. All of us have our own ways to brag on God, and once we say them, and somebody else is hearing them, or somebody else we had an event, and I asked somebody to praise or brag on God, and one person got up and said something. And then it was like popcorn that everybody was just pumping up because everybody knew that God had did something for them. And the looks on their faces, to be able to share what he did with us. And none of it was like bragging sessions, like nobody talked about getting nothing new and no new this. It was all what God had done. Like we know that God did it. Like I'll tell you, I'll end with this story about me knowing he protected me. I was leaving from my grandmother's home, which was in Arkansas, close to the Texas line, but I had to come back towards Tennessee. And on my way back, it was a tornado, and I'm on a two-lane highway at this point, and I'm listening to the radio is interrupted, like, all this broadcast stuff about the bad weather. So say if I'm at like exit like 2 25, the radio is saying exit 240 has an active tornado hitting the ground, whatever. So I'm going towards this stuff. And more, on the radio saying what to do. So at one point it said, if you are in the vicinity of, and it's naming exits, get off the highway, get in the ditch, like the announcers just saying what to do. And I'm like, I'm not getting in that ditch. Like I'm scared, but I'm not getting in that ditch, right? And I'm just like, okay, Lord, come on, Lord. Like I'm just like literally on my hand. Come on, Lord. Come on, Lord. It's dark now. Like the tornado clearly is coming this way. It's dark. There is no other cars on the street for sure. I'm just driving. I get to exit 239. It's supposed to be 241 that has this tornado. 239. I'm like, come on, Lord. Out of nowhere, in front of me, on the side of me, and behind me was an 18 wheeler. It's clear. I can see because I'm looking at the back of the truck in front of me. So it's not very dark because they blocking all of that, like boxed me in. And I'm like, okay, Lord, we just riding, right? Me and the 318 wheelers. We get past the tornado. The radio is now saying the tornado passed. Da, da, da. If you're here, they're still talking. Very clear where we are. I'm like, thank you, Lord. Out of nowhere, all three of them 18 wheelers was gone. There was no exit for them to turn off of. They didn't speed ahead of me. They were just gone. I know, crazy. I did that, but God, it's like, come on, Jesus. And so when I say Jesus is my friend, I say that, I mean that, because he's shown me so many times that he's protected me or provided for me. And thereafter, I just rolled on, got to Memphis, stopped and got gas, and kept on going. He protected me. And I know that everybody has their own story of what he has done. So if we equate that he blesses, he provides, he takes care of us without us even asking, he does it. All he asks us to do is give him 10%, give him something to work with.
That's
So
all.
that's all.
That's
I
all.
can I can I can feel you in that situation. I don't see well at night, so if I'm on the freeway, it's as if, and I'm praying too. I use my mama, my sister, whatever. They're in heaven now, but I said, look, I can't see. I need you all's eyes. And it
Mhm.
looks like out of nowhere, like you say, a truck will come like they know this lady can't see. Let me get in front of her so I can help her. So I
Yes.
I can feel you.
Yes, I was so excited. I mean, if one had just came me one thing, but it was like immediately all three, and I was like, Jesus. And we have to give him the praise, right? When he does these things, we have to give him back the glory. So he knows that we know it was him that did it. And when we tell other people that, they get to see, oh, he is a provider. Oh, and honestly, the God that we share. Because I say to people, we have to start talking about the God in the Bible or sharing the God in the Bible, not this God that we done made up now, because the God that we be talking about now, we have limit to him. Like there's no limitations on him. And if we can share what he has done for us, and people know that they ain't got to go back and talk about something from, 20,000 years ago. This just happened like years ago, he's still providing. He's still doing that. And if we can share those kind of things and let people who are unbelievers, even some people are believers and just don't have the faith as much as we do, they haven't experienced anything yet. We can share these things so that they can see the God of the Bible. And when it come time to talk to them about tithing, they can see the benefits instead of it just being money coming out of their pockets. So that'll be my word for you today. All right. Are there any questions or comments?
Great
All right.
job.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, ladies. I did send you guys your email today, and I apologize for not sending it last week. I lost my phone. Well, I broke my phone and I got a new phone, and all of the images and stuff apparently were not backed up. So I had to go get them out of a booklet to scan and try to get them back in. So I sent the stuff today. So you should have an email from me today. If you didn't get it, I'll resend it. Let me know. And when you get ready to start filling in your numbers, if it's not, computing, or you want to know what to put in first, just text or message me, and then we can set up time to talk about it so we can get you going on the right path. All right. All right. Well, thank you. I hope you guys have a good night. Bye.
Right, bye.
Right.
Okay, Bible girls, we're back because we had another question that I did not see before I turned the recorder off. So we're gonna take the moment to answer the question. Go ahead, Carla.
So if I was to make as a, pretend amount of money, if I made $28,000 a year, when I get my taxes, can I just pay $2,800, like give that check or give that money to the church, and that takes care of my tithes for the entire year?
Okay. So I'm gonna say yes, you could do that. So I'm gonna say there's a reason why we can do that, and I'm gonna tell you why people say you shouldn't do that. And I'm gonna tell you why people say things that it's just been carried over from tradition. So first, I'm gonna say yes because the principle of tithing is giving 10% of what you made. If you made the 28,000, you gave the 2,800. That's 10%. Okay, so technically, yes. The problem or the issue that you could introduce into that is that you waited until you got the tithe back, to the taxes back, which would almost be let's see, at least 14 months after you made it. So it's no longer a first, would be the
So
concept.
if I like, say, if for example my job, I don't have overtime, so I know this most likely is what I'm going to make.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm looking at it like for 2027, could
Mm-hmm.
I pay, okay, my salary is 28,000, 2027 February come, hey church, here's $22,800. That's my tithes for the year. So is
For
that
27.
for 27?
Not that it's for 26. You're
Right.
not paying in 26 and you wait till you get it in 27. Correct.
Yeah.
So if you did, so if we will go about it the right way to keep the first impact, that means you should pay tithes off your regular check in January. And in February, if that's when you get the tithes, you will pay the rest of what's not paid. That will be giving him a first.
Okay.
Right. So the element here is not the amount, now it's when,
When?
because you were holding it
Mm.
until, we're not holding it. You were waiting until you got something that said, I'm gonna take it out of this. The
Okay.
amount is there, so the heart is there. Are you in this? And we didn't even talk about like making the sacrifice, because every time that you saw the tenth happening, they were giving it first, that there was an allegiance back to God. You don't get into the sacrificing until um Leviticus, where God is saying, bring this first. Okay, so the tithe and the sacrifice don't have to be the same, but when you do that, it's not first. Now, what some people will say is, no, you should pay the tithe every time you get paid, and when you get your taxes back, you pay it off of that too. Well, the concept of taxes is the government is giving you back money that they already took from you,
Right.
which was
From the
taken
growth.
out of the same check,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you tithe off of the taxes, that's the sacrifice. You don't have to tithe off the taxes because you already gave that money. There's not the tax money is not new money. The tax money is I paid too much money. I gave
Mm-hmm.
too much money out of my check. But if I tithe off my gross, I don't owe it again. If I tithe off my net, I do owe off of the taxes because I didn't pay off of it already.
Okay.
Yeah, but from a traditional standpoint, again, pure tradition, people will say every time you get something, you're supposed to give something to God. Again, there was a concept of taxes in the Bible, but it was not in relation to this. The only time you see Jesus talk about taxes, saying you owe Caesar taxes, pay him the taxes. That didn't mean take nothing away from a tithe. You owed him a tithe. You owe both of them. But if you were paying um tithes off of the taxes and you're already taxed off the growth, you just gave God more. You don't owe it to them off of that second one.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Okay. We're going for real this time, baby girls. Bye.